Hi, if you're interested in Oriental rugs and other textiles and the cultures that made them past and present, RugTube is the place for you. We welcome collectors, dealers, aficionados, and maybe even scholars to talk about what's new, what's old, ideas, theories, and maybe even a bit of speculation here and there. We at RugTube know real art is the kind you can walk on.
I'm here with Astrid Eiland, who ran the Oriental Rug Company of Berkeley at their Solano location from 1975 to 1982. A lot of things have changed in the rug world and in the real world since that time. Can you tell us what it was like in the rug world at that time?
I started to work in our rug shop in 1975. The reason we had the facility was that my husband was very involved in studying Oriental carpets, traveling to the Orient, and also writing books. He figured that the best way to have access to as many rugs as possible in this country would be to have a shop where people brought stuff to be repaired, to be cleaned, to trade in, and to examine for him, which he did in great detail.
Why did the rug shop open on Solano Avenue?
We purchased the building on Solano Avenue. Solano Avenue was a very desirable location at that point. It was very friendly. It had many nice restaurants. It had a yearly activity which was called the Solano Stroll, in which people went from business to check things out, and it was a very pleasant environment.
Were there other antique stores or rug stores there?
There were numerous antique stores. There were little gift shops, ice cream parlors, restaurants, and actually 4 Oriental carpet stores on Solano Avenue at that time.
So there was a lot of walk-in traffic for rugs at your store?
Yes, there was good parking right in front of the building, and there were many people walking on the street that would see rugs and would come in to just learn a little bit about rugs, ask some questions, and then at a later time maybe bring in their rugs for repair or trade-ins, or what other activities we did.
So can you describe the average person that would just walk into the rug store?
The average person was young, of the hippie generation, usually not poor, living by themselves in most of the time fairly small apartments, and they wished to purchase some small carpets because they were very sparsely furnished. The average furnishing for a young person at that point was a mattress on the floor, an Oriental carpet or 2 in the apartment, and very few other things other than ethnic memorabilia.
So what you're saying is that younger people bought small rugs. What kind of small rugs? What patterns did they like?
Particularly rugs that were made in the villages. If we could identify what village, it was particularly interesting to them. They're usually coarsely woven, dark carpets, small carpets, particularly of the Bellucci type, darker in color, often very irregular, not even lying flat on the floor, almost looking like they were woven by people for, not particularly for houses, but maybe for outdoor activity.
What about the older kind of person who might want a Persian city rug for something like a dining room? Did they come to you?
Very few came for actual large dining room rugs, and since most large rugs are not woven in small particular villages, such as Persian city carpets, which are usually, of a very busy design, they were not the most desirable furnishings at that point.
So the person that would come in, how would they select the rug? Would they have something in mind? Would they want a particular pattern, or would they just be emotional about how?
A lot of people, or younger people, would come and actually sit in the rug shop for a long time and kind of be half dreaming and half under the influence of something rather. And they would essentially wait to see which rug was calling them, and frequently after about an hour or so they would say, "This is my rug," and they would get up, pay for it, and leave.
So those people, assuming that they would have a relationship with a rug, would there just be one rug they would buy, or would they buy multiple rugs?
It would usually be one rug, and I remember one particular incident where a young woman came in and she said, "Do you mind if, I need to take off my shoes and I need to wrap my feet in this rug for a little while to see if this is my rug?" And I said, "Feel free." That was her rug. She ended up buying it.
So did the people want to know more about the cultures that made the rugs?
Often they came and they had already read things about the history and about the areas, and at other times we would sit there and talk about it.
Now, at the time, the popular press was drawing an equivalence between rug dealers and drug dealers. Like, drug dealers were using rugs to somehow launder money or move money. Did you have any experience with that?
I did have some experience. There were some people that came and wanted to buy several of the most expensive rugs, and it was pretty obvious to me that they really did not have any particular fondness for the rugs. I remember one incident in Berkeley where a gentleman bought a number of rugs, of my most expensive rugs, and within a week I read in the newspaper that he was involved in some legal activities and he was actually murdered.
That's very disturbing. Now, with the average person coming into the shop, there probably would be a subset of those people who would be collectors, right? What kind of things were collectors interested in then?
Collectors would come and ask for specific things, such as Caucasian carpets or Turkoman carpets, or particular designs on the carpets. Collectors came frequently. They usually knew what they wanted. They did not stay very long if it wasn't there. They would go on to one of the other rug shops on Solano Avenue.
Now, moving away from the sales of rugs, the rug shop also did repair. Can you describe what the average repair was like?
Yes, we became involved in repair after my husband had thoroughly analyzed how carpets were woven. What the foundation looked like, what the knots looked like, Persian knots or Turkish knots, which direction they went in, what dyes were used, and we started to repair fine rugs that were sometimes abused due to lack of knowledge. A particular problem in the 70s was that large room-size rugs would come in with circular holes. The reason for that, according to the people, was that they had flower pots sitting there, or shrubs, or maybe trees. They were usually sitting on saucers, but somehow the moisture underneath accumulated and totally rotted out the area where the pot was sitting. We were able to actually restore those in an amazing manner with the same exact type of weave, the same type of knots, and even self-dyed vegetable dyes that we did ourselves. So
you mentioned that people were doing the repair. Can you describe a little bit about who you employed?
We had hired a number of people that my husband trained based on his knowledge of weaving and examining the carpets, and we had special tables made that had cutouts where you could reach both the front and the back of the carpet as you were repairing it. We had several people that became expert weavers and repair people.
Okay, and what about the washing side of the business? Was that important?
Washing was very important because Oriental carpets need very special care. In the beginning we had a few come in that people had actually put in a washing machine, and they came out totally irregular and crippled. A lot of people would soak them in bathtubs, which also the soaking did not do any harm, but the drying made them totally irregular, and we were able, with particular hoists that we had at our shop, to rewash them, to re-stretch them, and to, in many cases, have them look very well after we took care of them.
Now, in the 70s and early 80s, did you deal with professionals who would decorate someone's home?
In the early 80s, the market changed, and the people that came into the rug shops were decorators that had no knowledge of any Oriental carpet design, age, or material. The reason where they were hired by wealthy people to redecorate their houses or apartments, and usually they would come in and say, we have this color couch and this color painting, now what rug would match? I found that rather annoying, because the purpose of an Oriental rug did not seem to be that it needed to match a machine-made couch cover or picture on the wall. However, decorators were insistent on getting the colors that they needed to supplement the furnishings that they had purchased.
In the 70s, were average people concerned about chemical dyes?
In the early 80s, people were beginning to notice the difference between synthetic and natural dyes. And one of the earlier colors that stood out as very synthetic were reds and oranges. And it usually doesn't take very long for somebody to be able to differentiate which is a natural dye and which is a synthetic dye. In the early 80s, a lot of carpets that were available were mixed. They had basic vegetable dyes and supplemented with synthetic colors. If you turned those rugs over from front to back, you could usually very clearly see that the front was no longer the same color as the back.
And at that time, was there a real emphasis on hand-knotted rugs versus machine-made rugs?
It was beginning. People often used to refer to hand-knotted. There were particular rugs that had a different kind of base and like hand-sewn edges or ends. In the early 80s, people were beginning to differentiate between what is a complete handmade carpet versus what is a machine-made carpet.
By the time that the rug shop closed, what trends were you noticing in the rug market? The assumption being that the rug market was not as healthy in the early 80s as it was in the 70s.
In the early 80s, a number of rug shops opened. Berkeley had a fair number of rug shops, particularly on Telegraph Avenue, Solano Avenue, and College Avenue. The focus was different. The advertisements were different. It had less to do with the culture of a foreign country. It had more to do with what is rare and what brings the most money.
Well, thank you very much. We'll talk with you later.